So you know you're now being recorded.
Hi everybody, it's Carol Joyner.
Hey Carol.
And had a great day. I need to get to the mic. This is the 7th Annual BWR National Summit Policy Day webinar. And just for the quick agenda, we're going to have a welcome from Melanie. We're going to have an overview of the summit from Lisa. I'll discuss some national policy issues along with 3 or 4 other people. When we get to that, you'll know who. There'll be a discussion on the girls track on Policy Day, what the girls will be doing that morning, tips for successful meetings, self-care on the Hill, and then we're hoping to have at least a half hour, maybe 20 minutes for a Q&A. Sound good? All right, Mel, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us a hearty welcome.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everyone, Holly and all, and thank everybody that's on the call. I'm going to be very brief. I'm excited. I want to thank everyone for all your hard work. The energy is growing every minute, right? Every minute, the energy is growing, and people are still registering, guys, ladies. And at some point, we're going to have to cut it off because we got to make sure we'll have seats for everybody. But the other part of it, I think that the energy with Black women is just, I think, just growing. That we are, ready to really, seize our power to do what we need to do. So this Policy Day, as broken as Washington is, I'm just excited we're going to go there and continue to demand that our issues are addressed and elevating them. And we can't do that without you. And just honored to be a part of this, which I feel is going to take BWR to the next level in our organizing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Lisa.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So this is an overview of Policy Day at the summit. So this is this is all 3 days. So we'll start on Wednesday. You already know, you arrive and check into the hotel, and then we head over to the African American Museum of History and Culture for our opening reception and award ceremony. Then on Thursday, we arrive at the Capitol. We leave the hotel at 8 a.m. or 8:15 departure. Get on the Hill at 9 a.m. for a press conference and action on Capitol Hill and visits. We will have our action or a press conference between 9 to 10 a.m. at the House Triangle, and that's right across from the House office buildings in front of the Capitol. Then at 10:30, we have, I know this says 10 o'clock, but it's 10:30 to 11:30. The girls have the option to go with their delegation to the visits or go to a briefing of Hill staffers and interns that can talk about their experience on the Hill and how they got there. Then we have lunch on your own, but we suggest you go to the cafeterias on the Hill, which is really easy to get to. And then at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, continue your visits. At 2:15, we will be heading back to the hotel. Then that evening, we will have our briefing at the hotel, the Crystal City Marriott, from 4:30 to 6. And so that will be our briefing. And then we have free time on our own. And then on Friday, we of course have Community Day at the hotel, and Saturday, All About Me. So I won't go into that because most of the folks here on the call have seen the agenda at a glance. And we'll send that around also. Go ahead,
Carol.
So we're going to be looking at 2 different policy tracks. One is state policy issues that you're bringing. They're the issues that you put on the grid, on the schedule, the Google Doc, where you said you wanted to talk about either HBCUs, or you want to talk perhaps about state education issues. But you're coming with those issues, and we're hoping that you're going to prepare, a 1 or 2 pager or some information that you can put into the packet that you're going to get. We're going to give you a full packet with everything except your particular state issues. You'll need to include that. In addition to your state issues, we're lifting up 4 policy issues. The decennial census, which Holly will review on this call, the criminal justice reform issues, which Lisa will review, gun control safety from Salandra, and I'm going to talk about the threat to paid sick days and fair scheduling around the country. And then we'll also include, because we had so many national issues, there's many, many attacks on our way of life, on our families, on our communities. So we're putting all the other issues onto a grid. That grid will be in your packet so that when you hand that packet to the congressperson or their staffer, they will have a sense of what the issues are affecting Black women in our communities. They'll have the 4 national issues on the 1-pagers. They'll have your state issues on a 1 or 2-pager. And then they'll have the grid covering all the other issues. You can't say they don't know.
All right, so let's move right into our first, and of course I'm biased, most important national issue, and that is the census. So this is the time when I get to actually geek all the way out and people actually care about it. So the census one, I just want to thank AFGE for helping put together some of this information. I also pulled it from the Census Bureau itself to just give everyone a quick background. So first, what is the census? Every 10 years, the census counts every resident in the United States. It is a constitutionally mandated activity. The decennial census, meaning every 10 years. The data collected is used to do a number of things. Some of the most important are determining the number of representatives that a state has in the House of Representatives and how the maps are drawn for elective office. It is also used to distribute billions, and that's billions with a B, dollars in federal funds to local communities. Who uses the census? Literally everyone uses the census. I won't go through this in depth, but I do list here some important things about how local communities use the census for schools, social housing, transportation, healthcare, and training. This is not an exhaustive list. It's used for many, many more things, but these are some of the highlights that I know we talk about regularly as part of BWR Policy Network, so I just wanted to show you this. Businesses also use the census. Media uses the census when trying to research news stories and feature articles and documentations. And students use the census in every aspect of curricula, from math, history, geography, to civil, social, and political education. And probably one of the most important things, it is literally the wellspring of all data and source of data for most people who use it, researchers and academics. So it has a wide variety of uses, and literally everyone relies on it. Some information about where we are on the Hill or in the Congress with the census. The Census Bureau conducts research, testing, planning, development, and systems in preparation for conducting the census over the period of a 10-year life cycle. The 2020 census life cycle started in fiscal year, FY stands for fiscal year 2012, and runs through fiscal year 2021. Unfortunately, to date, Congress has failed each and every year to properly allocate the amount of money that the Census Bureau requests to perform the duties that it needs to perform in each of the years leading up to the actual census. So that means since 2012, us being in 2018 now, the census has been underfunded. And that underfunded number, I have a box over my underfunded number here. Let me see if I can move it. It is, what is the number?
Oh.
You can see it, I just can't see it. But it's been underfunded by millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. 210, thank you, millions of dollars cumulatively since, and that's through 2017. So now that we're in 2018, that number is actually much higher. So what happens when the census is underfunded? First thing is it affects the way in which the count is taken. This is super important because what it means is that communities that are rural or remote or in areas recovering from national disasters, those are places that tend to get undercounted. It has already canceled advertising campaigns, partnership programs like with organizations like BWR, and coverage measurement surveys, and all kinds of things that help to provide for the test, planning, and preparation for the census. It reduces in-office canvassing, and it causes for us to have to revise plans in a shorter amount of time than they standardly would like to in order to get the actual count right. And I just want to make a special note here. April 1 is the start of the test for the census, and they're already reporting that they've had to cancel key parts of that program. So that program is moving forward without some of the things that they would need to make sure that the count is carried off properly. So we already know we're going to have a bad test. The ask, which we ask you, is that the U.S. be prepared. We need to keep the census preparation on tap. That means that even though you may hear in the news that Congress has allocated an increase, we're asking that they actually allocate an increase that takes care of the backlog as well. Specifically, $4.735 billion to the U.S. Census Bureau in FY 2019, which is $933.5 million above what the president has asked, and $475.5 million above what the Commerce Department estimates. So just keep in mind, they're going to use the fact that they already are doing an increase. The increase is not enough to cover what they need to cover in order to have an adequate census. Here's a brief breakdown. 4.7 million, billion, thank you. The recommended total is for preparation and early implementation, which is important. And then the remainder is for ongoing economic and demographic studies. So what happens is after the census is taken, they do ongoing studies to validate the information. And that's all about the census. We're taking questions at the end. So does anyone have any questions in relation to the census? I know it's a lot, but hopefully.
Hi, Holly. I had and I missed it. Forgive me.
Yes.
The one thing that I think is also important, if I missed it, just tell me. You said it. Is that when people are talking about the census, of course, it needs to be broken down in small bites, but we need to make sure that we're really discouraging them to have that the citizenship question on the form.
Oh, yes, I did not say that.
And so that's a really important talking point so that we narrow it down to fully funded.
Yes.
But also need to deal with the fact that there is still floating out there the notion of adding a question around, even with all of the testing. It takes 10 years to develop the actual form with all the research that's done.
Yes.
And then, of course, with this new administration, anything goes.
Yes.
And as well as the Capitol Hill, itself, the Congress people, that's another way to scare Black immigrants and other immigrant populations from actually filling out the form.
Yes.
So that's a real tangible talking point to have on top of the fact that it needs to be fully funded. So if I had to say the two things, talking points wise, would be it needs to be fully funded because it impacts everybody's budgets, right, including their own district, right. 2, it needs to be about fair representation, and 3, and discouraged about the citizenship question.
Thank you.
Holly, I have a question, Salandra. We've been having some, can you hear me, Holly?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, yeah, we've been having some discussions around this in Florida about the census, and the area that we're having concerns about. We want, although the immigrants, we don't want them to be scared off and not be able to, put that on there for them to come after them, but making sure that we stress the point that Black is on there, and then folks could put next to Black, whatever, if they're from the Caribbean or whatever, so that they can be counted.
Right.
That's an issue that we really need to lift up, and that's been a lot of talk here in Florida around how to make sure that Black people get counted, like the Hispanic folks, the Latino folks are being counted. So, and to identify that we're from the Black diaspora, but making sure that, our numbers get up.
Absolutely. So at this point in the game, though, the question related to the Black or whether people should check Black is not something Congress is dealing with as much as the budget and what's on the form is coming up. However, this is why we need the money, because the money will ensure that organizations like ours can make sure that we have the advertising money and the organizing money to make sure that that message and other messages around the census are clear. It's because of us as trusted organizations like ours that receive some of that funding to do grassroots organizing, that we can communicate clearly to folks not only the importance of filling it out, but how to fill it out so that it's in their best interest. So,
Holly, one of the things that I want to piggyback on that Solange is talking about, Congress has oversight, right? So one of the things we want to consider is finding out who we need to be talking to that is on that committee, and tie it back, because the reality is they were supposed to have a question of the country of origin on that form, and this administration has totally changed that. And so, and I'm just throwing this out as a strategy. It could be you ought to have a hearing about the impact of these decisions that go against all the work that had been done over the past 10 years, and how that'll have an impact on them having the undercount, which means their district will lose money, and really making sure that we really clarifying those. I'm geeking out because I'm a geek on the census, so I'm weighing in a little extra, because we really have to clarify what they can do. They can weigh in on that question, right? Because it was supposed to be in there, and the administration is making changes. So we want to make sure we're clear in our talking points. And I'll look over it with you too to add anything that I think.
Certainly,
I think folks should do that see it. Okay.
We'll definitely put that on there so that people understand how that all goes together. And your hearing point is very valid, because there have been 0 hearings on the census, which has never happened in the history of censuses, that they didn't have that Congress didn't hold any type of hearing. There have been a few hearings at the Census Department, but not through Congress. But
the other thing I just want to wrap this conversation up by saying that Holly and Mel will be putting together the 1-pager or 2-pager that goes into the materials on the census, I'm hoping, and that you'll streamline this material to really hit the 3 or 4 points, Mel, that you talked about.
Okay, thanks. Would do.
All right, so let's move on. Thank you all for that robust discussion. I love hearing everybody getting interested in the census. It's super important. We'll move on to criminal justice reform. And that's Elisa.
Thank you. Just some quick overview facts around criminal justice reform. Since 1980, Congress has increased the size and scope of the federal criminal code, and today there are 4,500 crimes in the books. In response to prison populations have grown leaps and bounds. We all know about private prisons in this country, and then the DOJ expects a 2% increase in the federal population in 2018. 70% of the mandatory minimum sentences are imposed on African Americans and Latinos. And since 1980, we have increased federal spending on prisons by 595%. So we must reduce mass incarceration. So there are several bills out there. The first two come over from last year. So the Safe, Accountable, Fair, and Effective Justice Act, Bobby Scott introduced with Jason Lewis. The front and backdoor approach is basically before they get in prison and then when they leave. And so this particular bill I was trying to pull up is a broad approach to sentencing. It hits everything from sentencing to what they do in prison to reform people. Sorry, my new
re-entry into the community.
Okay, here we go. So it takes a broad-based approach to improving the federal sentencing and correction system, spanning from sentencing reform to release policies. The legislation, which is inspired by successes of states across the country, breaks the cycle of recidivism, concentrates prison population on violent and career criminals, increase the use of evidence-based alternatives to incarceration, curtailing over-criminalization, and reducing crime and saving money. This, so this one is in the House, it's HR 4261, and then the Senate 1917, which you probably heard, and there was some news on it last week, actually, the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act. This is also the one that Cory Booker also supports. And the one thing I would point out about this sentencing reform, the administration said that they wouldn't do anything around sentencing reform. They want to do quote unquote prison reform. That was announced last week. Grassley was pretty upset. But the one thing about the sentencing reform is that it adds another mandatory minimum. And the thing about the Safe Justice Act is that it takes away mandatory minimums. And so it definitely does not add new ones. The sentencing reform adds a new one for opioids, people that use fentanyl, they would get a mandatory sentence versus using heroin, which they're the same thing, one's just cheaper and synthetic. So then there's the Senate Bill 4667, which is the Corrections Oversight, Recidivism Reduction, and Eliminating Costs to Taxpayers in our national tax system. I'm not as familiar about that, but that information will be in the packet that we have with more information just about recidivism, and that is actually more what the administration is looking to do.
It's a backdoor issue. It's
right.
Prison reform versus sentencing reform.
Right, and so this is what the administration is pushing, and it only talks about prison reform, and I'm not really sure what they mean by that. So we can go back. Go next one. Thank you. So the talking points, addressing mandatory minimums, we do not want those. We do want to reduce recidivism, finding new approaches to reentry, parole, and probation. We need bipartisan support. Both of the bills that we talked about, or all the bills we just talked about, all have bipartisan support. We need to reinvest in safety in communities, eliminate federal criminal penalties for simple, non-violent drug possession. And the opposition to these the opposition is Attorney General Sessions is not going for any of this, and the correction officers also don't want any of these reforms, and then we'll also add the administration. So already opposed these. Okay. Is the passage of the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act in the Senate, which we know well, they just said something last week, but we still want to get members signed on and still push this. We want also the Safe Justice Act in the House, bail reform. We have leadership from 33 states around that. Drug reform, and I'm assuming this is drug reform and drug sentencing laws. Oregon and Washington State have done some really innovative stuff around drug reform and sentencing laws with alternative sentencing. And this says sentencing reform in Louisiana. I'm not as familiar with Louisiana.
New York is doing it now.
Okay. So, pardon me for that, but I will make sure I know more about what's going on in that state. I'm not sure if we need to know that. Okay.
And now we're going to move to Salandra. Salandra, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Holly.
Oh, wait.
No, we do.
Salandra, let me make sure you don't have any questions. Hold on one second. Do we have any questions about criminal justice reform? Open up the mic.
Again, you'll get a 1 or 2 pager on this in the packets.
Okay. Good. All righty. And go to gun control and safety. Let me unmute your mic, Salandra. Give me 1 second. I accidentally muted it. Okay, go ahead, Salandra.
Thank you, Holly. So yes, one of the issues we would like to raise also is gun control and safety control. Every day, 96 Americans are killed by guns. And as you know, here in Florida, we've been dealing with this for the last couple of weeks, and well, more than a couple of weeks, ever since Trayvon Martin, and now it's just escalating into the schools. So we want to really advocate that, not arming our teachers or others in the school, strengthen federal background checks, banning bump stock machines that turn up semi-automatic weapons into automatic weapons, limiting high-capacity magazines that makes these guns look like they're so sexy to our children, and something that they just need to be enticed with, raising the age limit to really from 18. It needs to be raised up for purchasing. 18-year-olds should not be able to purchase guns like AR-15s. I mean, at 18, you may turn 18, but you're still not even considered eligible to buy a pack of cigarettes or alcohol, but yet you are able to buy a gun that can actually take out other people's lives as well as yours. So that's something we definitely need to stress while we're on the Hill. And cutting ties to the NAR. Do not let the money and the lobbyists like NAR be the ones that's running our policies and governing how to further kill our children in America, let alone in Florida. So the bill that we're looking at is HR 5087, that we want everyone to assault ban weapons of 2018. We have a Democrat from Rhode Island, as well as one of our friends here in Florida, Ted Dutch, that's out of Boca Raton, West Palm Beach area. So as anyone on the West Palm Beach area, we really definitely want you to make sure that you're paying attention to that, because we will be making sure that that we're on the Hill that day, and that we support and moving forward with this, and giving him the support he needs from his constituents, saying that don't back down on this bill. More than 100 Ds in the House have signed on. Right now, no Republicans have signed on, so we definitely need to make some calls and some visits to those folks that's in our delegations to make sure that they are aware of HR 5087 and getting a position on it and trying to make sure we can move them. It regulates the importance of manufacture, process, and sales or trades or sells weapons and for other purposes. Names 205 guns that fall into the category, including AK-47 and AR-15. So gun control and safety, let us live. The bottom line, we want to live. We want our children to live as long in lives into retirement, not not even being able to get out of high school. So that is our message. Let us live. Pass the assault weapon ban of 2018 HR 5087. Don't arm teachers in school or any other personnel at that. What they're trying to do here in Florida, bus drivers, maintenance people, coaches, we just can't have it. Strengthening federal background checks, ban bump stock machines that turn the semi-automatic weapons into automatic weapons like Las Vegas, limiting high capacity magazines, and raising the age limit. This says 218. I think we need to. It's from 18. We got to have higher than 18 for purchasing guns like AR-15. Cut ties to the NAR.
Sorry, I'm slow.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think that's the last slide. Are there any questions or comments on gun control and safety? And I'm going to open the mics. I hear everybody's stuff now.
This is Angela Salandra. I have a quick question for you. Can we also add something about the number of gun shows in our states? Because I know in Ohio, we have gun shows here, like 22 just for the month of March. And a lot of these gun shows that we noticed in our state don't even have this like certification, strong, background check like others do.
Well,
yes, I think, Angela, I think that is something that we definitely have to raise because that we have them here in Florida as well. And actually, I don't know if the public really is aware of it, that you could actually go to a gun show. I can sell my gun at a gun show, and it does not have to be registered to the next person.
And sorry. So HR 5087.
Okay, go ahead.
HR 5087 includes language in it around gun shows, and it prohibits the sale, I think, without extensive background check at gun shows, but it doesn't limit the number of gun shows. So that's something that we need to, add in our talking points or think about.
Okay. Are there other questions about gun control and safety? Okay, then we'll go to our next national topic, which is Carol. Do not unmute, they can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're like all in the room with our computers, muting and unmuting. So there's this tremendous attack on paid sick days and fair scheduling laws that is moving fairly quickly through the House of Representatives. It's already passed the Ed and Workforce Committee, and it's probably going to be marked up this week or next week. And it's called HR 4219. What it says is that for jurisdictions that have passed paid sick days and scheduling laws, and there have been paid sick days passed in 32 jurisdictions, many states, I think like 10 states, like 20 some odd cities and 2 counties. Scheduling laws have been passed in many jurisdictions as well. In all of those locations, the employers in those locations can choose not to comply with the paid sick days or the fair scheduling law that has been passed. If they provide 2 really basic days, some minimum standard of paid time off, like vacation time or paid family leave or another kind of thing that might be in your as part of your personnel manuals, right? So if they provide any time off, then they can ignore what the law has stated for their state or city. And some places like San Francisco have 9 paid sick days for large parts of the population. Some places have 5, some places have 6. And so our concern is that this is a violation of democracy. It undermines local laws and democracy. So next slide. What we're hoping people will do is, talk to their citizens at home, but also while you're on the Hill, let them know that this bill was originally called the Safe Haven Law because it gave employers safe haven from having to comply with the local and state laws. Now imagine every time we fight for a law on a local or state level, if the federal government can come in and introduce another law that undermines it, then what are we all working for? The bill is called 4219 because we don't want to use its real name, which is the Work Flex in 21st Century Act. It essentially, is one of those bills where they use a nice fuzzy name that sounds like you should want it in order to undermine your rights, your worker protections, and your time. The bill is really poorly written and it will be tremendously confusing to implement. So we're concerned about that. And that's also why I don't have a lot of detail. There is some material online if you want to Google it and see just how confusing. We're asking everyone to vote no. We're asking everyone to vote no if this bill comes to the floor of the House. We want senators to ensure that it is not heard in the Senate, in any committee. We want to talk about it as it is. We want them to protect local forms of democracy, and we want to talk about this bill as an attack on our democracy. And the alternative to this bill is making sure that everybody knows about it, is signed on to the Healthy Families Act, which is a good paid sick days bill of a national level, and the Schedules That Work Act, which is also a national bill. I'll take questions if anyone has them.
Your lines are open. Are there any questions? I sound like the AT&T operator.
You do.
Okay, I think we are good on that. So we're going to go to that. Concludes our discussion on the national policy issues. I want to remind you all that from 9 to 10 on the Hill, we'll do our press conference in action. That particular session, which will be hosted by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is one of our Congressional Black Caucus members from Texas, will be focusing on the gun violence and safety issue, immigration and DACA, and protecting the safety net in the federal budget. The safety net issue being all of those things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Those are your pocketbook economic issues. So we're going to emphasize those at the press conference. And Gayla, you'll get, when your package, you'll have more information on those. But this gives you some detail on some of the other national issues that we're looking at. So now we're going to go in our program to our girls track. Before I close out the policy discussion, are there any other questions about any of that stuff related to policy? Anything else that we need to include on any of these issues? We've taken good notes, and we do also have the recording to make sure that we update this information with the things that you've raised. Are there any other things that we should be aware of? Okay, I want to make one small comment though on the paid sick days, especially if you're talking to Republicans. If your Republican member has been an advocate of states' rights, that has been a very effective argument for 4219. One of my friends sent me that tidbit. So if you know that you're talking to a Republican member who has been supportive of states' rights, share with them, because they're not using this language that Carol has used about federal preemption when they talk about this. And you'd be surprised because it's so poorly written. People don't really know what's in some of these bills, so you would really be educating them. All right, so let's go on to the girls track and what's going to happen on Policy Day for the girls track. And that is Lisa.
All right. So very similar to what we were talking about for the women's track. At the Girls Policy Day, again, we'll arrive at 9 a.m., do the press conference on the Hill, which Holly just described what we'll be focused on, from 9 to 10, and that'll be at the House Triangle. And 10:30, we have a room in Longworth House office building where the girls could decide if they're going to stay with the delegations and do the visits with them from 10 on, or if they're going to go to the briefing, which will be Hill staffers and interns, where they can have a discussion and conversation around, you know, what they do on the Hill, how they got there, what they like, you know, ask questions, what the environment's like these days. And then this link goes to, I don't remember. Oh, this was Carol's link, which
give people an idea.
Gives people an idea what people do on the Hill. It's if the girls wanted to read up before they got there and have some questions. So then at 12 or sometime around there, or at least after we meet with the Hill staffers, we want the girls to meet back up with their delegations, and it might be good to clarify that before you know, we all disperse, maybe before we leave the hotel, to decide, you know, are you going to meet your delegation at a particular building cafeteria, just so that we make sure that nobody gets lost. We plan to have navigators with folks on Policy Day that know their way around the Hill, but we definitely don't want any girls to get lost. So, you know, we just need to make that decision. And then from 1 to 2, you can go on afternoon visits or walk to visit your congressional member if you don't have a meeting. And then at 2:15, we are headed back to the hotel, and for our back to the hotel. And at 4:30 is the policy briefing. And then the girls on that Thursday evening, also we have a pizza and paint mixer, another kind of social, you know, social get to know each other, so that the young people aren't just stuck with, you know, the people that they already know. And so we wanted to make sure that they really got some kind of relaxed time to connect. And so that'll be in the hotel from 8 to 10.
Okay.
Any questions?
Mics are open. Are there any questions on the girls track? Okay, we're gonna move on to the tips for having a successful meeting. And that is Jennifer. Jennifer, are you with us? Jennifer Tucker.
James, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Jennifer, you have two different speaker sources. So you either need to talk to your computer or your phone, but you can't use both. Okay, I still got you though. Jennifer? Jennifer?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh.
But you're echoing.
It's a bad echo.
I think we have a bad connection, Jennifer. We're gonna see if we can fix it, but in the meantime, we're gonna have Carol continue. Okay, go
So
ahead,
these
Carol.
are the people in having a successful meeting. And the most important thing. Sorry for the technical problem here. We
I
good?
lost my mouse, that's what happened. Okay, go ahead.
One of the most important things, Jennifer, just text us if you're okay, if you think that you fixed whatever's going on. The most important thing is that we plan ahead. That, and planning ahead means knowing who the representative is that you're assigned to meet with, what are their issues, what are their committees. I tried to put some of that into the Google Doc. So this is the first time I tried to load the Google Doc with as much information as I can. And as the meeting is set up and we confirm it, I put in the link to the congressperson. I put in a little bit of background information about them. But you can just click on the link and learn some more if you don't know a lot about them. If it's your congressperson, maybe you know a lot. You also might want to do something personal, something you can connect with them on. And then Holly's stuck in the link there if you want to go on and just find your representative as well. You can do it from that source. Know where they stand on the issues that you're talking about. Are they a friend? Are they a foe? Or are they persuadable? Persuadable is a good place to be in, because if they're a friend, you're kind of just, all in agreement. It's not a waste of time. You build a relationship, but it's not the, best use of your time. If it's a foe, it's kind of a waste of time, because no matter what you say, they're not going to agree. If they are in that squishy middle, if they're persuadable, then that's a really sweet spot. And you can convince them and tell your stories and have a deep conversation. You want to have your game face on. Be nice, cordial, but really clear. You want to build that relationship. And sometimes it's helpful if you can see yourself as being useful to them, bringing materials that highlight your issues. A lot of staffers, and y'all who've done this before, sometimes you're the first one telling them about this law or this bill. They've never heard about it. They don't know the details. They have a ton of issues that they're dealing with on the Hill, and the Hill is in chaos these days. And so you might be informing them and helping them understand an issue for the first time. So take that short 1 or 2 pager, or use the materials we're going to provide on the national issues. Have a lead person and a note taker. Make sure the leader, lets other people speak as well. And identify who that note taker is so you can take notes in the packet. Bring your state-issued ID. ID is required to enter most buildings in DC. You might need it for the African American Museum. You might need it on the Hill. If the security level is high, they'll ask for ID. If the security level is low, they may not. So you really need to have it. Next.
Oh, sorry. I'm enjoying the presentation. I know, I'm enjoying the presentation.
And then there's tips on having a successful meeting. While you're at the meeting, do the introductions. Everyone should introduce themselves. Even if the girls are there, they should definitely introduce themselves, name, city, what high school they go to. The leader should have a short elevator speech about the reasons for meeting, about BWR, and the topics that they want to discuss. The note taker will be in there taking notes. And so address the state and local issues first. And a really good thing to remember is with the state and local issues, have a very short statement about what they are and go straight to your stories, your facts, your support. Stories work best. Having young people tell stories about a particular issue, having folks in the room tell stories is really critical. We're addressing national issues like the census, and in some of those other issues, like if you're in Florida meeting with Deutsch, you definitely want to raise the gun control, right? Or if you're meeting with anyone else in the judiciary committee, you want to, raise gun control. And you summarize very quickly. Everything is kind of short, no really, really long speeches. Listen for responses. You want to get the congressperson talking. Try to get the staff or a member to share their position. And I wouldn't spend much more than 15 or 20 minutes. Now, what happens sometimes, if it's the congressperson, they just talk and talk and talk and talk. You don't want them to suck up all the room in the air without you being able to get your points across. So you're going to have to navigate that. If it's a staffer, they do more listening, I think. So you want to try to get them to talk. Then you close and you ask staff person, you thank the staff person or the member. Sometimes they'll want to take a picture. Be willing to. You might want to take a picture. Feel free to ask if you can pull out your phone if you want a picture with that congressperson and your delegation. Usually are happy to take pictures.
Okay.
And then follow up. We're learning that if you don't follow up, then probably the meeting didn't happen in their mind, Someone in each meeting should be selected to send a thank you note. It's a wonderful thing for the young people to do. Send a little note, saying thank you for meeting with us. These are the things we talked about. Include the next steps or the possibility of meeting in the home district for more follow-up. And as the months go by, send a personal note, an email, a text, or whatever. The goal is that we can't just come every year for a meeting and then leave and come back the next year. Now we have a pattern, 7 years. We should be building relationships with these congresspeople so that we can call on them, or they might call on us, for our input with regards to things. I don't have any other questions on having a successful meeting. Are there questions? Any other questions? I don't have any questions. So tired.
Let me open the mic. Whoa. Okay. Are any comments? He'll visit. Okay. All right. I'm trying to. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go to self-care on the hill. Whoops, I went backwards. My fault. Self-care on the hill.
So what we've seen over the years is that we generally do fine. Basically, people are fine on the hill. We just want to remind you that self-care is important. You have to take good care of yourselves. We love you. We don't want anyone getting tired or having accidents or things like that. So prepare for the day. Check the weather and dress accordingly. According to our local weather person, Lisa, it's going to be a beautiful day in
50.
DC, 50 degrees, sunny,
No rain.
nice, no rain, so that's good. So if it's 50 degrees in DC, you all in Florida and Georgia may feel that's a little cold or whatever, and so, you know, definitely layer. Jennifer was going to do this part. She was saying definitely layer. It's warm for the outdoors, but it'll also, you know, make it a little too warm inside. So layer. Shoes are really critical in DC. What you'll see in DC is that people don't wear a lot of fancy shoes. It's not like New York or LA where everyone's like, you know. But it's because there's a lot of hills in DC and there's a lot of walking. So wear comfortable walking shoes. It's called a hill because they are hills and there's a lot of walking. Check in with yourself throughout the day. If you're feeling overtired, if you're feeling stressed, let the lead know, you know, sit down, rest, drink water, bring a snack or mints, whatever you need to feel comfortable. Make sure you take that lunchtime, eat a full lunch. You know, it's going to be a long day and we're not going to get back to food until later in the evening in the hotel. And food will be, I think, on your own, but that you're not going to eat until later in the day, much later in the day. If you take medication, remember to take the meds with you if you have to take it during the day, or take them, you know, whenever you need to so that you are feeling good. And we're trying to figure out, you know, a buddy system, make sure that you have a list, someone's phone number in your delegation in case you get in any way, you know, separated from people, you know, who you can call. Any other comments about self-care? You guys have done a lot of this before. Do you have any suggestions about things you've done in the past? Bring a bottle of water with you. You know, do you have suggestions about that you can share?
I would suggest if you don't have the most comfortable shoes, bringing your sneakers and walking and changing once you get into the office or before you get to the office. That's another trick that a lot of folks play around here. We get rubber-soled shoes. We wear them everywhere. And then you get your heels and you put them on when you get, you know, through the door of the building. There are brick streets here and brick sidewalks, not very female friendly for, you know, our heels. So I would stress that because I know sometimes folks come to DC and want to look real cute, and then the shoe game just is not, it's not fun when your feet hurt. So
Or your heels break.
All right, so that's my suggestion.
Any questions or thoughts? We can open this up. I think total Q&A at this point.
Yep.
What's on your minds? Anything? What are you thinking about? Can I just say this one thing? Am I on you?
Oh, they're all muted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say this one thing. We do not have all of the meetings set up. We have some of them. We have some, and Jennifer and I are working feverishly to set up these meetings. So if you haven't already identified who you want to meet with, right? And I don't know who you want to meet with, and they're not on that grid, on that that Google Doc. I have a few I have to add, like Carrie's, I have to add yours, but for the most part, everyone should be on there. If you don't see them on there, then that's a problem, and you should call me. The other thing is, if you still are reaching out to people, probably the fastest way is to use the online meeting request service. Forget about sending a letter. You can call and ask them what the fastest way is, but the request at this late date really should come from a constituent, because they really don't care what I think. It should come from you. And then you let us know, and Jen and I can follow up with you, with them to secure the meeting. But we are running out of time.
All righty. Is there any other tips, things that you need, information that you need to be prepared, or any other way that we can help, or that you all suggestions that you have to help each other? Okay, I'm getting a stone face from everybody.
It's late.
So, no, it's late. So I'm going to assume that there is no further information to be shared. Melanie, do you want to have a closing remark before we shut down?
Thank you and good night.
Russell Simmons, and we will take it. Carol, good?
I'm good. If anyone has questions, you can email me. You know, you can email Lisa. We're all on the email chain.
All right. Well, this has been our first webinar with Hill Day. Hopefully you all got a lot out of it. It has been recorded. I'm going to stop the recording now. We will make the recording available